Well, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm here with my friend Steve Byers. And for the three of you that are in the audience, I can't really see with all the lights, but I'm really glad you're here. Last night, Bill Rectanis, my colleague, was up here and he made a comment about how important our partnership with Energy Logic has been over the years.
And, I got a little teary when he did that.
Well, I have to tell you that it's so true. And every time a new builder talks to me about getting on the high performance path, the first thing I say is find a great rater. And so I appreciate your partnership, and we're still partnering. And so I'll just kind of tell this story about, we were thinking about doing a presentation here, and I had been to the ResNet conference, and I always hang out with Steve when I go to the ResNet conference, and Steve Baden said, in every rating in the country now, there is a ResNet carbon index. And I went, huh? And so I huddled with Steve and came up with this idea that perhaps that's an underutilized feature of the her software.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people don't realize what's in there.
And so at a minimum, we thought, well, at least we could expose the fact that there's a lot of data now for like the 300,000 ratings of homes that happen a year. That builders can access and begin to benchmark carbon. And so from that idea came this presentation. And so I'm going to kick it off here, but I just wanted to acknowledge my friend Steve Byers. I'm Gene Myers. We rhyme. This was meant to be. So anyway, I'm really happy to share the stage with Steve today. So I thought I'd just start off with a few slides that it's probably preaching to the choir about, but I'm getting old, and so I'm getting more retrospective in my life and thinking about what matters. And we're in this highly charged political environment, and I've started talking to people, and if they seem like they're a climate skeptic, I just say, well, how does your insurance company feel about that? Because we all know what's happening to insurance rates all over the country. And it's based on hard data, and they can argue about why, but they can't argue that it's happening. And because I'm so old, I thought I would look back to what was it like the day I was born versus what it is now. And it's pretty shocking that we have about a 30% increase in CO2 in the air we're breathing today than the day I took my first breath. And I'm also getting old enough that I have grandchildren. And I start to worry about, well, what's Alma's life going to be like? And you can see the data here that the projection is that when she's my age, we'll have twice as much CO2 in the atmosphere if we don't take action. And this is not trivial. And somehow I think people think that, 1.5 degrees or whatever, this is a tragic thing that's happening. And so for me, in my old age, I guess I'm getting a sense of urgency about this. I guess maybe I've always had a sense of urgency, but I'm getting an urgent sense of urgency about this. And I think it's reinforced by the fact that where I live, it's so obvious. We have a beautiful national park, Rocky Mountain National Park. If you go to the West Portal, it's dead. This isn't just a few trees. This is the entire forest. And this is the pine beetle epidemic. It's a climate event. This is staring us in the face. And so the evidence for us in Colorado is all around us when you go to the mountains. In the places where we build, the cities where we build get this. And I was sharing with some people yesterday that our mission to become a carbon neutral builder, is it possible that it's a more effective, unique selling proposition to a municipality than it is to a customer? I hate to admit that, but yes, and it turns out that maybe our biggest client now at Thrive Home Builders is the town of Breckenridge. And I kind of love the subtitle up here on their sustainability plan, to sustain what we love. And to me, that's really what our mission, to have our very own Thrive Climate Action Plan to become a carbon neutral builder, that is what it's essentially about, is let's sustain what we love. I believe our customers, despite the fact that maybe municipalities are great customers for us, I think our customers are expecting our homes to be part of the solution. They may not be down in the weeds about, well, what's our operational carbon or what's our embodied carbon, but they have an expectation that a new home today should be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And that's what I'm so proud of EBA Builders for, because our homes are part of the solution. I was talking with Aaron just a couple of minutes before taking the stage. It's incredible that, I think you said, Aaron, that we had 300,000 starts represented in this room last night. EBA's becoming a force. I mean, there were 1 million houses built last year, and there were 300,000 of those were builders represented in this room. And I'm really proud of the accomplishments of Aaron and the board and the staff and the EBA Academy and all of the wraparound services that EBA provides to be part of the solution nationally and in the U.S. globally to these urgent problems. And so what is a builder to do? I believe EBA builders do have a head start. And for me, it started with energy efficiency. It grew to indoor air quality, indoor water conservation, and now finally to carbon reduction. And so I was compelled to put together our first ESG report last year. And it's kind of a nutty thing for a small private builder to do because nobody's making us do it. I think that a lot of investor pressure, SEC pressure, Wall Street type pressure is on the public builders. But I felt like that to have credibility with our cities and towns, with our lenders, with our stakeholders, that we should at least know what an ESG report was. And so we went down the list. We checked all the boxes. We hit the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We hit the social and governance. Sarah asked me to serve on a governance committee of one of her efforts, and I just said, I think I hate governance, so don't make me do it. But I think it was a valuable exercise to go through an ESG report, but was it worth it? And that's really the kernel of the message I wanted to share today. Yes and no. It certainly gave me perspective on what really matters. And to just do kind of a summary of that, when we looked at all of the work that we did in our ESG report about our corporate footprint, which is what most ESG reports focus on, it had the carbon impact of only 2 houses that we build. And after going through all that effort and hiring a consultant and paying a consultant, Aaron recommended the consultant. It was like, all that work, and it really paled by comparison to the impact of the homes we build. And so I was sharing with Aaron that, maybe I get kicked out of his sustainability group for saying, I don't know if we're going to do another full-on ESG report, because I think what we're going to focus on is benchmarking the homes we build. And that's my takeaway from our ESG exercise was, as builders, I believe that's what we should be focused on. And if we are publishing ESG reports that don't talk about the footprint of our entire fleet of homes that we deliver in the previous year, we're not doing our job, because we're not really measuring our impact. Aaron gave me an out. He taught me a new word last night that oh, well, that's okay, Gene. They call it materiality. That it's okay for you when you're looking at your footprint to go what's material and what isn't. And although we do have a lot of bigger builders in the room now, for 99% of us, maybe 90% of us, from a materiality standpoint, the homes we build is the only thing that's material. We're too small, our businesses are too small to worry a lot about our corporate footprint. And so when I reached out to Steve, I said, I want to calculate the operational carbon and the embodied carbon of the entire fleet of homes that we delivered in 2023. And so that's what we're going to walk through. And I have to say, I've attended some sessions here, and I feel pretty stupid because I was in Jacob's and Carla Butterfield's presentation yesterday, and they're getting so granular about the embodied carbon of every piece and part of the home, and we're not there. We're still trying to figure out how do you measure it, the whole footprint, and we're grappling with the high degree of variability of results that come from using different carbon calculating platforms. And it occurred to me that that's probably our path, is that going forward as we kind of weed out, focusing on things that we don't feel are as material, that maybe next year, rather than just trying to get a grip on what's the total impact of our entire fleet, we can begin to look at our material choices that we build with to try to reduce that footprint so that when we go to do an offset, that it's a smaller offset. And so that was the yes and no, was it worth it? And so with that, it's pretty simple. We do have a corporate footprint. We calculated that last year. I don't believe on a per square foot of homes delivered that our corporate footprint has really changed that much. And so we're using last year's calculation of our corporate footprint per house. We add that to the operational carbon footprint and the embodied carbon footprint, and we come up with the total footprint of our homes. And so that corporate footprint that we calculated last year is 1.24 metric tons of CO2 per 1,000 square feet of homes that we deliver. I'm good with using that going forward and not going through the brain damage of recalculating it every year. Of the homes we completed 71 homes last year. Our average HERS score was 25, and the split between single family and townhomes is there. And for those of you who might be a little new to this, what the heck is embodied carbon? What is operational carbon? I love this last sentence there. Embodied carbon is the carbon footprint of a building before it becomes operational. So it's all the pieces and parts. It's the carbon emitted in producing the pieces and parts of the homes we build. And in order to get to that calculation of a home, we need to then know all the pieces and parts that go into our home. And we have a great partnership with MyTech, Mark sitting here. We're moving to doing more and more of our homes with panelization, using pre-assembled wall panels, roof trusses, floor trusses, even floor cassettes. And in the MyTech software, you can access a great bill of materials that has a detail far beyond that a builder of our size could really get by putting someone down with a set of plans to go pick through it and figure out what those pieces and parts are. And so in a way, we're repurposing the software that MyTech uses to drive component manufacturing and using it to get to the bill of materials to begin the calculation of our carbon footprint. Then we take that bill of materials and we go out in a carbon calculator and find the environmental product declarations, the EPDs for all those pieces and parts, and add them up. It's simple math. It's a huge pain in the neck, partly because a lot of the products we use don't have readily available EPDs. And I mentioned that there was kind of wide variability in the results of using different carbon calculating footprints for the same house. We're doing a big house up in Breckenridge. MyTech just finished up our carbon calculation. On one carbon calculating platform, that house has 120 metric tons of embodied carbon. On another, same house, the result was 544. Are we happy with a 5x variability depending on which platform you use? It's kind of disturbing in a way. And then a third, we checked it with a third, and it came out in the middle. And so if I average it, I'm pretty sure it's wrong, and I'm not quite sure which to pick. But I will say this. It takes me back to a time when we were first trying to get to net zero energy, and we took the same house and we put it through the HERS software, the Passive House software, and BOPT, which is an NREL software. And you had wildly different answers. And I was so upset because how can we measure if we got to zero if we can't agree on what the yardstick is? But I was kind of perplexed and said, well, the heck with it. We'll just use the HERS software because at least the mortgage companies recognize that. In my old age, I'm less worried about all of this variability. We just need to get to a standard method of calculation so that we can benchmark and then get relative improvement. And at this point, I'm agnostic as to which one it is. So I'm not worried about nailing what the footprint is of a specific house. I'm interested in the industry benchmarking a standardization and methodology so that we can benchmark it and measure improvement over time. And I think that's really what the ResNet RMI embodied carbon working group is working towards. They're working towards an ANSI standard. I will be the last person to nitpick their methodology. I talked with Steve Beatty. He said, we're going to get that out for comment. And it's like, I just want it to happen at this point so that we can move forward as an industry and start to get better. I expect you to read every line on this slide, but this is the kind of output that you get. This came from One Click LCA, life cycle analysis. And I really need to shout out to the University of Denver. Until we have that simple methodology for the industry that is under development, I think this lift to go calculate your carbon footprint is beyond the scope of most EBA builders. It's a heavy lift, and I'm grateful for our partnership with MyTech and the University of Denver. They took all of our houses, every one of them, and calculated the footprint in One Click LCA and added them up to get this result. And it's not to say that you couldn't find a partner like that. I keep feeling like I'm abusing the University of Denver by asking them to keep doing this. And here's the thing, their grad students love this. It's actually content for their education that they feel is relevant to what's happening in the world. And so you might be surprised that there could be a partner for you somewhere in your market or in your network that would be willing to help you with the lift of calculating your embodied carbon. And so when we end up with this, our total footprint for all the homes we built in 2023 was 4,707 metric tons. Now, to put that in perspective, we could buy an offset for that. And Mark Chin's here from CNOT at our conference. And the going rate on his website this morning is $12 a metric ton. And so basically for a little north of $50,000, we could offset our entire embodied carbon footprint. That's not a big number for most of us. I'll be honest with you, this year it's a big number for us. We've had a rough year with our interest rates, but at the end of the day, this is not some astronomical multi-million-dollar problem for a builder to offset their footprint. And so here are some metrics you might be able to use. without having to go through that analysis. If you just want to start to benchmark what you're doing, and that is that for our single family, we have about 0.05 metric tons of CO2 per square foot on a single family home, and about half that for a townhome. And so if you wanted to just start to get your arms around it as a builder without doing anything but multiplication of the square footage of your homes, you could do that. And so now I'm going to turn this over to Steve, who's going to talk about operational carbon. And off we go, Steve.
Thank you, Gene. So on operational carbon, I'm not going to read all these off, but these are all the components of what goes into operational carbon. So what can a HERS rater do for you? The first thing is that we can actually, because of what Gene said, and we're pulling back the curtain on the data that is already there in the rating software today, we can assess the operational carbon. I'm going to show you a little more detail on that in a minute. And in doing so, we can also, by doing various, you can do it the easy way or the hard way in the software. There's a component, we use Ecotrope, which almost everybody does now. There's a component in the Ecotrope software that you pay for called scenario modeling that allows you to do really robust scenario modeling and enabling you to look at different impacts. So you don't have to do the old school way of one, let's change one thing, run the software, change the other thing, run the software. You can look at a lot at one time using that tool. And as Gene mentioned, ResNet is in process now for creating the embodied carbon, it's a working group that's doing that, task force, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but Chris Magwood leading the effort on that, and that's really promising and we're really looking forward to that. But as far as the rest of the operational carbon part, the emission rates, this is all coming from NREL in terms of the data that's feeding the operational carbon impact, and hourly consumption tool components that come out of the software itself. So I wanted to get to this. So this is a sample output. This is obviously just a spreadsheet. This is not what it looks like in the software, but pulling this out. And so what I've done here is taken some townhouses and single family components, and you can see, so many of you probably have never even seen the carbon index out of the software. So what you'll see there in the column in the middle where it says carbon index, the townhouses at 126, 114, and 106, and single-family houses down at 46 and 35. All of that data, try to get out of the way of the screen a little bit, all of that data then, tells you a total reference at CO2e tons per year, and then we're getting a delta off of the reference to the actual, the predicted, carbon, operational carbon, and so you're seeing the delta from the reference to the equivalent. So when it's, when we're negative numbers there, it's worse than the reference home, right? And positive numbers at the bottom for the single families, better than the reference home. And so I can't stand here today and tell you exactly why that's doing what it's doing, but we're at the very beginning of understanding exactly how to use these tools right now. So as Gene noted, average HERS index for the fleet of Thrive homes that we looked at was 25. The average carbon index was 81, and total rated CO2e per year 2.4. And again, the townhouses and the single family, and again, I don't really know quite why this is happening the way it is. Townhouses, so attached units, are performing significantly worse from a carbon index perspective than single family. And that's counterintuitive to me, so I don't know exactly what's happening there yet, but we will figure it out eventually. So then we're getting this single family, that's SF, and townhouse TH, CO2 averages. These are the things that are being looked at in the software: heating, cooling, hot water, that should not hot water should be, lighting, appliance reference, and on-site generation. Again, another slide showing you that this is a more expansive picture of what's happening in these homes. Again, you can pick out the single-family homes immediately because they're the ones that are in green. So when we're looking at the carbon index, one thing that immediately is obvious, and it should be, is that when we have renewables and we don't have renewables, you immediately see the impact, as well you should imagine. And from an operational carbon perspective, as soon as you put renewables on, it gets a whole lot better, right? And then, as Gene noted, we need offsets. I just think of it as the last mile. It's very difficult to get, it's expensive and difficult to get all the way to zero. And when we run, and for those of you who don't know, when you're running HERS models and you're trying to optimize the shell, and I'm most familiar with climate zone, 5, 6, 7, where we are in Colorado, you get to about low 40s on the HERS index, and then that's about as far as we can go without adding renewables. And so renewables come in to take us that last bit. So what can't we do? What raters can't do? We really can't do anything about the reference home. And I say that because in the sense of there's a lot of things we can do, but we can't impact, for good reasons, we can't impact the reference home. And the accuracy of the operational carbon is dependent, and the indices we're getting is dependent on a portfolio approach to the utility rates. So we're not getting it, if we have one utility versus another, and if you take, for example, a utility like, say, Fort Collins, a municipal utility that has a climate action plan involved, their portfolio is going to be cleaner than another utility, but we can't show that in the carbon index yet, at least. Let's see. So again, as noted, we can't yet use the HERS rating software directly to get to embodied carbon, but it's coming. And I want to reiterate that, this is a great place to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We know for sure that it's not going to be as accurate as doing a by hand LCA one-click assessment. But if we can get, when we get this tool, and we're going to be able to allow people to very easily get at least a benchmark, a reference place where they can start to work of, then over time I have confidence, just like my confidence in where the rating tools are today and the information they give us on operational energy and carbon is much higher than it used to be, because the tools are continually getting better, both because the software developers are getting better and because ResNet, love them or hate them, ResNet keeps trying to do better and better work. So as mentioned, ResNet is working on this. There's an advisory committee investigating the embodied carbon standard, and because ResNet is an ANSI standard setting body, that's why they have to go through public comment periods. It's just part of the ANSI protocols to do that, and it's good because that will enable them to do the best they can at this moment, but I fully expect it to get better and better over time. So what is appropriate resolution when we're talking about embodied carbon, or operational carbon for that matter? Good, but not great. We can't not move forward because of infighting about what the right answer is, because frankly, I'm not sure that anybody could tell you what the right answer is. I don't think we really know. One thing I do know for sure though, and this is a thing I bring up repeatedly so to raise awareness, is that referencing homes to the 2006 IECC is not the appropriate benchmark. And that goes for the HERS index, it goes for carbon calculations, and for those of you who aren't as familiar, what a HERS index is referencing to the 2006. A home that scores a 100 in the HERS index is equivalent to a 2006 home. Well, the problem that I have with much of the work that's being done on operational carbon in particular is that when we're showing, when a builder wants to say, we're responsible for building this much better than we would have to. If you're referencing to the 2006, that's wildly inaccurate in my opinion. You only should be able to claim the delta for the impact that you're having, the good work that you're doing, to the code that you had to build under. So if you had to build under the 2018, that's the appropriate reference point for calculating the delta on carbon, whether it be embodied or operational. And Gene, this is your slide.
You know, just a comment on something Steve said about the townhomes. We've always had issues, Steve. When we build the exact spec on a townhome, we get a worse HERS score than we do on a single family with the exact same spec. And I don't get exactly why that is, but it's also showing up on the carbon index.
Yeah, there's work to be done there. That just can't be right.
Yeah. So thanks to EBA for letting me slip this slide in last night. So out in the literature, this slide is pretty prevalent, where you have over time, over the years, operational carbon growing in its cumulative effect, and embodied carbon of our 2023 fleet of homes being a constant, because that's what it was the day before it went operational. What's interesting is that in the literature, this red line is down here. And the implication of that in the literature is that operational carbon is more important than embodied carbon. And why is ours so different? And the reason I wanted to put this in the presentation is I think all of your houses would look like this if you're building a high-performance home. Our operational carbon is bound to be less than what a code-built or a typical existing home would be. And so to me, for an EBA builder, because we're already so good at operational carbon, to me, it reinforces the importance of getting a handle on embodied carbon of what we're building. And so that was the purpose of that slide. And I think we're wrapping it up. This was one of your slides, Steve.
Yeah, so a lot of work went in, and Green Builder Media led the charge on creating, because you pointed out, you go through the conventional ESG methodology, and it's just wildly inappropriate for a builder. And, Sarah and her team recognized, and others recognized this a long time ago, so built an ESG for builders tool, guidelines. And it's great. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. It is what you need if you want to do an ESG report. Yeah. This is the tool to use, and not go through the conventional pathways, which was basically built for if you run aluminum smelters in Peru or something. Right. But not for builders. So it's fantastic, and this is the direction to go if you want to do your own ESG report. I think, my opinion, at this point in time.
Agreed. And then we were going to talk just a little bit about offsets. I was actually at a modular builder in Idaho. Mark Lee and I went to go see Autovol in Idaho, and I was talking about offsets, and they literally glazed over, like, what the heck is an offset? And so I thought I would just pull down just a really one-sentence definition. A carbon offset is a certificate representing the reduction of 1 metric ton of carbon emissions, and you can buy that to offset the metric tons of impact that you have. It's a little controversial because some of the offsets may be a little nebulous. The critics would say some of them might even be fraudulent. But at the end of the day, it's a real thing, and there's a thing in the world called a carbon credit. We don't have that great of a market here in the U.S., but globally there's a carbon credit market, and that's what a carbon credit is. And if you wish to become carbon neutral, I don't think we'll ever get to the point where the homes we build are inherently carbon neutral. You can go into the market and buy an offset at a reasonable price to become a carbon neutral builder. That's our pathway. We expect to do the work that we saw in Carla's and Jacob's presentation yesterday to try to reduce how big of an offset we need. But here's the truth. If you're just looking at economics, today offsets are so cheap that it's maybe more cost effective to buy an offset than to go do that work. But over time, I believe those offsets are going to become more expensive, and that's what's going to drive the trade-off as we specify and design our homes to have less impact to begin with. And so anyway, I thought I would just throw that slide in on what an offset is. So that's what it would cost if we get back to this concept of everything that we did, corporate, operational, and embodied, it would cost $56,000 to totally offset our footprint in today's carbon market. And so with that, I think we're done. If there are any questions, we're happy to stick around and answer them. I can hardly see you with these lights. Look at all those hands go up, Steve. It's incredible. Yes, Glenna.
Okay, so if you are a zero energy ready builder and you haven't really started down this pathway, what would be the first steps to start, I guess establish a benchmark, what your pathway is going to be, but then what are some of the resources that are out there to help us?
Well, this is going to sound pretty elementary, but we need to know what's gone into the homes we build. And we don't. How many times do you feel like that adhesive that got used in your house was what happened to be in the pickup truck that day of the sub that was doing the work? And so I think the first step is getting a handle on what's in our homes. And once we have that, we can create that bill of materials. I think, for years I've gone to conferences all over and heard about BIM and how you're an idiot if you're not using BIM. And I think the actual power use case for BIM is to automate the creation of an accurate bill of materials. So that would be a possible step. We're doing it through the MyTech software. And so if you're panelizing any of your houses, I think that's readily available. It's in the software. All you have to do is ask for it. And so I think that's a start, is what's in your homes. I think asking your rater to start now and use the information that's in the rating that you're getting to get a handle on your operational carbon is key. And then what I heard yesterday was that this embodied carbon methodology from ResNet will be out for public comment November 16th. So it's upon us. And it may be that a year from now, or definitely 2 years from now, all you have to do is ask your rater, and you can get the embodied carbon and operational carbon of your homes. And so that might be a case for waiting until it's easier, but at the end of the day, I think that's the only way that this is going to be widely adopted in the industry. Does that help, Lena?
Yeah, as I said, like that, and Gene said, that is right there today. So what you can do today is the rater can get right in and start, getting that operational carbon for you. So you don't have to wait to do anything on that. And I don't think that the rating industry itself, or collectively as we work with the rating tools and what's there, is going to, change anything about the embodied carbon of materials. But the awareness of it, we will then be able to reflect the changes that the rest of the world is going to drive the change in embodied carbon, not energy raters, of course, right? So, but it will give us that view into what it is and give you a way to measure. And so since we're early, I'm going to slightly off script here. So, and this is not a pitch for this event because we can't handle it. So we do, Energy Logic does a thing called Raider Fest every year. It's really fun. It's really for Raiders, so it's not for anybody else really, but you're welcome to come. And this year I did basically I did a glorified book report on a book that I'm recommending to all of you called Not the End of the World. The author is Hannah Ritchie. It's an amazing book, and it's kind of what it's about. And I think for this audience, it will particularly resonate because what it gets to is, yes, we have a lot of problems, and they are dire and serious problems. But if we act on them and stay the course, keep acting, do more, we're not screwed, actually, is the case the book makes. And I feel, and she's a young woman, she's the chief data scientist at Our World in Data, which go to that website, it's all this free information and graphs about the state of the world. And she's a professor at Oxford, I think. So, and she's a young woman, and she said, like, and I'm trying to regurgitate exactly what she said, but she said she, felt doom and gloom as a young person, that there was really very little hope. And so then she decided, via data, to start looking and seeing, is that really true? And the more she discovered, the more she realized that it's not necessarily true, that the media, and I'm not, damning the media, it's what they do, it's what they kind of have to do, by using, sensationalist, picking a piece of data out and sensationalizing that to, say how much trouble we're in and we're doomed. She picks those apart point by point. So I really recommend that book to everybody. And if you know young people who feel despair and like there's no hope, get that book, get it to them. So.
Well, and I'm hopeful because the people in this room are going to make a difference. And what we're finding is that the people in this room spill over to the big public builders, and they could really make a difference. And so I'm optimistic about our future, and yet not so optimistic that I think I can retire. I think I've got to keep working, and I hope you all will too. Yeah, I think that's it.
You don't get to retire.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.